Good morning, and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session for August 13th, 2019. I'm John Hutchings, and to my left is
Gary Edwards.
My right,
Ty Menser.
my left again,
Robin Campbell.
Romero Chavez.
and
Thomasina Cooper.
on the bench, if they can hear you, Robin, okay, and
Nick, Public Information Officer.
good, thank you. Thank you all for being here. We're going to start with this agenda, the one pager, and then we're going to go into the BoCC agenda for this afternoon, and then right into the BOH, Board of Health agenda for this afternoon, and we will chat about next week's BoCC, Board of County Commissioners meeting. So starting with this afternoon's August 13th Board of County Commissioner meeting, we will call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Menser. Yeah, and then an approval of the agenda and the board meeting minutes from August the 6th. And then we begin with presentations, and the first one is the Tenino Depot Museum presentation.
Yesterday, Council Member John Callahan from the City of Tenino came to the office and requested to have this presentation be added to the agenda. He would like to give a presentation related to the to Depot Museum and some other efforts. And as a result, he's going to donate what he calls the Tenino wooden dollars as part of history in Thurston County. So he will have the opportunity to provide additional information on his presentation. And you, I'm sure you have any questions on that. That's the limited information that I have for you on this item.
Any questions about that?
No, sir.
And I presume he will, because I won't ruin it now and steal his thunder, but he'll talk about the history of the wooden dollar.
I believe so.
If you don't know it already, it's pretty interesting, very interesting. And this is for the train depot. It says Tenino Depot, but I'm going to presume it's for the train depot.
I believe
but
there's
I
the
don't
train
know.
depot.
Yeah.
Well,
Way cool.
We'll add that.
I look forward to seeing him
Yeah.
and hearing that. Then we have an opportunity for the public to address the board. And that's rare, but is there, you plan on?
Yes, you probably may receive some public testimony related to the courthouse from Mr. Pettit.
I'm sorry, from who?
Mr. Pettit. And you receive a couple of emails from him last week and this week. And we're in the process of finalizing the response letter to his letter of August 4th, 2019. Hopefully we have a final review from Commissioner Menser, and we can send that out today. Also, he, in his emails, he requested public records. We are in the process of addressing that, and appropriate information will be provided to Mr. Pettit after the public records request is completed.
Okay.
No, sir. Good.
Question or comments?
No.
Okay. Thank you. County Manager's update on any other follow-up? Nothing, I would imagine.
I will follow up on the public testimony outline that we have responded, hopefully by then, to Mr. Pettit. If not, our response will soon follow.
Okay.
But we have a draft letter for his August 4th, 2019 letter that he sent to the commissioners.
All right. That takes us to the consent item. As of right now, is just one consent item, and that's the voucher list.
Yeah, that's your weekly
Yep.
voucher list for your consideration, commissioners.
Do you have any questions about the vouchers or concerns and such?
No, I went over the vouchers though, and let's see, did I sign yesterday? Maybe. I've often thought that those vouchers should be pre-signed by either yourself or the financial person that goes over those. And the reason I say that, I know we're ultimately responsible, but I think it was about $5 million yesterday in the vouchers that we signed.
About 60 or 70 pages.
And I tried my darndest to go through them and figure it out, but I need a little help, I guess. And I want to make sure that it is done right, and it would make me sleep better, I guess, someone from, that was actually overseeing that in authority was to sign off on those before they came in front of us.
So financial services goes through that process, making the check and balances. But certainly, if you like, either Robin or myself can initial those vouchers.
Yeah,
before it
just
goes to your
initial
attention.
to make
Yeah.
sure that they've been reviewed
I do
properly.
review them before it goes into the red folder. But if you like,
Just
to know-
another check and
yeah.
balance, that's all I'm
But
I'm
also,
saying. I don't know what my seatmates think
but also,
about it,
please don't feel obligated to sign those vouchers. If you have any questions,
Well,
you
it
know, we
isn't
can
that I've
always
got
answer those
questions.
questions.
I don't think it's humanly possible that we could probably keep track of everything. But I just think for those that have that assignment in their activity in government, maybe
can
that
certainly
would help
do that.
us, at least it would help me have confidence.
We can certainly do that.
Feedback?
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the same, as long as you're in the same boat we're in, but an extra layer can't hurt, right?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
all I'm,
Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you for that, because I look at these things and I see $19 for maintenance on a copy machine, all the way up to 1.3 million for, and there's 60 to 70 pages. I'm looking at these things all
I
the
mean,
time.
it's time
So what am I supposed to,
consuming
what's going to pop out and stand out? And I don't know most of this stuff, because it seems routine, but a lot of it is like big ticket items, which draws your attention. But the nickel dime stuff can add up too.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to make sure that there's another set of eyes that know more about each individual department than I, or the history. That would help me.
But even
Thank
even after perhaps having the initials on those reports, if you have any questions on that report, please let us know, because it shouldn't be an expectation that it should be just rubber stamping your signature, because it is important for us to answer any questions that you may have. So if anything just doesn't look right, or you need additional information, please let me know. We'll follow up with that
And
information.
I don't know about my seatmates, but I have on occasion.
I
What
have
does this
on the
mean? What-
on occasion, too.
Explain it.
So you're reviewing that voucher list by state law. We cannot release payments without the commissioner's approval. So that's why you see it. But as Romero said, it's important if you have any questions at all that you ask.
Yeah. Okay. That takes us to department item number 4, Public Works, request for approval for an ILA with the City of Lacey for Mullen Road.
Yes, you reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this is related to the Mullen Road road project. This project has a total cost estimate for construction of $11,137,255. And 3 weeks ago, you approved issuing the contract to the contractor who is going to be providing the construction. The 11 point or so million dollars includes 4 different funding sources. From the federal government, the Surface Transportation Program grant, which is $2 million. From the state, there's the Transportation Improvement Board for $4.2 million. The City of Lacey contributes $2.6 million, thereabouts, and the county contributes just about $2.3 million on this project. The proposal before you is to approve this interlocal agreement, which serves as an instrument for the City of Lacey to contribute the $2.7 million for this project.
Okay. Questions, comments?
No, sir, got it. I think we went over it pretty extensively so far.
Anything, Ty? All right, thank you. Number 5, IT, and that is authorized IT Director Dennis to purchase ShoreTel telecom equipment.
This project began back in 2014 when the county was going through the process of replacing the phone system that we have in place, which includes all the voicemails and everything else. Obviously, upgrading the phone systems in the county is a very tasking and expensive venture, so we have faced this in phased approach. And what it does is updating the old Nortel phones to the new ShoreTel phones system. And over the years, we have updated the Tilly Road Corrections Facility, Prosecutor Attorney's Office, the Family Justice Center, Drug Court, Main Campus Building 1, the Record Centers, and elections. So this particular request is to authorize the Director of IT, Informational Technology, to sign a contract for $79,691 to continue with this process. In this case, we're going to be replacing the phone systems in the Family and Juvenile Court, as well as the Sheriff's Field Operations Bureau. And again, this is a phased approach that we have gone through, and we just need to make all the phones talk to each other in the county.
If we have any questions, we have Mr. Osorio in the audience.
I do have one question.
Sir.
Good morning. Dennis
Good
Osorio,
morning.
Thurston County IT Director.
Good morning. When we make this change, is this going to have to do with physical equipment and licensing issues? And is it transferable anywhere? And what I'm wondering about is if we upgrade for the sheriff and then the sheriff moves somewhere, are we going to be able to utilize that equipment?
Sure, we'd be able to utilize it, and it is for both the IP phones, the VoIP phones, and the licenses to use that. But if we wanted to reuse that or repurpose that, we'd be able to reuse that. Once we purchase it, it's ours. It's
And the
county's.
county manager mentioned that it would be field operations of some type. Now, I'm not sure if that means where they're located currently from that point on, or does it also include some of the cell tower information that they utilize in their day-to-day operations? Is that also being upgraded?
No, I believe it's just where they're located now on the main campus.
So just
and
for
Tumwater.
maybe in-office computers and phones, or just
Just phones, just to get off the old system onto the new system and continue with the project and hopefully get the entire county on one system so we're not having this dual support. And there's also some operational issues as far as voicemail and transferring voicemails in between those systems.
And it sounds like we've made quite an advancement in some of the entities already. How far along are we?
I believe we're just about 50%. This is we're trying to get the entire main campus by March 2020 to be completely on the new system. So I was relooking at the project since I've been on board and trying to really get us all on one system and see what's needed to do that so we could stop this dual support, not to mention the old system is outdated and causes issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Knowing that technology changes every 1 to 3 weeks, how long will this be designed to last? Any idea before we need to upgrade again?
Well, phone systems are normally longer-term systems, so 10 years, but I wouldn't want to commit to something. As you know, I don't own the technology, but I would think once we get everything on one system, it should be sustainable for quite some time.
And this would interface with the new technology that we're looking to go to with the 911, should that levy pass?
I'm unaware
Or is that
of what
not,
that.
is that completely separate?
It's a little bit different, yeah, because the TCOM 911 is an analog system that communicates with the radio systems located in each of the patrol vehicles, for instance, and communicating with the hub.
Right,
And,
yeah.
and from the hub, communicating with the rest of the partners on the first responders.
Okay, so that's completely separate. And I understand that, but completely separate from any phone service then?
Yeah.
Any phone, okay. All right.
Correct, yeah, this is just the internal county phone
This
system.
phone system, okay, good, thank you. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item number 6, Public Health and Social Services, setting a public hearing.
Commissioners, last week you approved to set the public hearing for September 3rd, 2019 at 3 in the afternoon. This particular request is to move the public hearing to September 10th, 2019. September 3rd is a Tuesday after the Labor Day holiday, and usually that we don't have a board meeting after that holiday. So this is just to make sure that the public has enough time to do that. And this particular proposal is related to changing the Thurston County code to allow the Board of Health to have wider business hours. Right now, under the code, county code, only allows for the Board of Health to meet 3:30 in the afternoon, like this afternoon, every second Tuesday. This proposal is to allow for the Board of Health, you, to meet without having a special meeting notice. Like, for instance, today, you will be reviewing the Board of Health meeting for this afternoon. That's a Board of Health business that needs to be advertised in advance and needs to be published because it's a special meeting, since this is outside of that meeting. So this particular proposal allows a little bit wider range when you can meet as a Board of Health without having to do a special meeting notice. That's really the gist of this proposal. Again, I apologize that we didn't track on this, so this proposal is to cancel the September 3rd, 2018 public hearing and set to the September 20th, 2019 at 3 p.m. in this room for you to hear public testimony on that.
10th, you said.
The 10th.
The 10th.
So
Thank you.
it still has to be noticed to the public as any meeting. So what's the difference between it being a special meeting notice and what staff would have to do for a regular
For
meeting?
instance, and let's say if during the public testimony, after you receive the testimony, you approve this, if we have agenda setting like today, we just need to post it online 24 hours in advance. The difference is today's we have to post an actual notice, announce it in the newspaper when you're going to be meeting. So it's a little bit different, a little more extra work that we need to do because it's a special meeting.
The newspaper gets involved?
Yeah, we need to publish it, I believe, right?
They receive a notice. It's not like our regular legal notices. This is an informational public service announcement type of notice.
We provide it.
Yes.
It's not a publishing, though.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's free. Oh, of course not. But that was my question. The meeting is still noticed timely enough in advance. It's just not a special notice.
It's not a special
Requires
meeting.
extra steps.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. Any other questions?
I guess I'd like to make sure that the public is aware that this will give us more flexibility, but they will have every opportunity and be notified well ahead of time of any meeting that we have.
Thank you. This
That's
is not the intent to reduce it's just to
Right.
facilitate, expediting the process internally.
All right, so we'll cancel, presumably this afternoon, we will cancel the 3rd and move it to the 10th public hearing. And agenda item number 7 then is the county manager's
Yeah, this is
approval.
this particular item. Usually you have that on your consent agenda,
Yeah.
but we're catching up from work sessions back in 2018, and this will give the ability for Commissioner Mason to recuse yourself since you were not part of those meetings.
There's a lot from last year.
I thought we did these, but
There's catching up. There's so many. There's so many.
Yeah, 8. 9. Okay. Yes, sir.
I guess I'd just comment on these. As we are trying to catch up and become compliant with what the law requires, it isn't like any of these meetings weren't public meetings, noticed to the public well ahead of time with an agenda. And we're just kind of formalizing something. None of these meetings took place outside of the normal course of business. And,
No.
Yeah,
and each one of those were noticed ahead of time, and the agenda was published.
And this is a formality for you to approve. Those meeting notice becomes part of the record. But for instance, if the citizens would like to have copies of what was discussed, we always make available those meeting notice on a draft form. And so that is part of the process.
And I guess citizens were always available, allowed to come to these. It was
Yep.
open to the public. So.
Very transparent. My question is, though, going back a year or more, and Commissioner Minster wasn't here, will we know which ones we both attended and which ones I may have missed or Commissioner Edwards may have missed? We'll know that in advance before this afternoon?
Well, I believe all those meetings you both attended.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you like additional information,
I
let
just
me
want to
know.
ensure that.
Yeah.
So I'm voting on, so I want to ensure that I was there.
Right.
Okay, or that he was there, if you're going to vote.
How about we'll leave that up to staff to let us know that,
We'll check,
and if there's
double check
any
on that.
discrepancies, we'll deal with those separately.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Then we move into our commission reports, and then we review everything, and then we
We
adjourn.
also go back, but if, for instance, if a commissioner is not in attendance, we need a quorum to approve.
So what would you
That's
do
part of
if
the
it was
record.
Commissioner Blake and Edwards,
So you,
but you don't have a quorum of
you
people
just
that were there?
You just approve us to form.
Has to form.
Okay.
And we've got all those notes and records.
The attorney shook his head, yes, okay,
Could I go back to item number 2 real quick?
certainly.
Can you have your follow-up on citizen issues? And usually you're talking about public comment at the board meeting, but we did get a letter from Homes First at some point, and I thought we were going to at some point discuss that or have a follow-up, or does that come during budget?
I'm planning to bring that as part of the budget, because that was an actual budget request.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't
Yeah, and so it's.
slip through the crack,
Yeah,
because we haven't had a chance to address
it's
it as a board.
$1,000.
Anything else regarding the BoCC for this afternoon?
No, sir.
That it? Okay. Then we'll move to the Board of Health for this afternoon. And we'll call the meeting to order at 3:30 p.m. Allegedly approve the agenda and the minutes from June 11, 2019. And get into proclamations and presentations. And the first one is National Breastfeeding Month.
Commissioner, before you start,
Yes.
I'd just like to congratulate Shelley. She has finished his master program as of last week, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yay, good job.
Great.
You look smarter.
I am. Good morning, Commissioner. Shelley Slaughter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services and Administrator of the Board of Health. And with me,
Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health.
Okay, first
Okay.
proclamation.
yes, so our first proclamation is National Breastfeeding Month, and we'll have Kateri Wimsett, she's our Education and Outreach Specialist, and she will be joined by Lori Montoya and Amelia Grube from our Nurse Family Partnership Program, and they're going to provide an overview of the benefits of breastfeeding and local community resources, and ask you to proclaim National Breastfeeding Month to raise awareness of the importance of breastfeeding, along with many others throughout our nation.
Will there be a group of people here in attendance for that proclamation?
I am not aware of other community members that may attend. There is the South Sound Breastfeeding Network that Kateri is a part of, and there may be some members, but accepting the proclamation will be Lori, Amelia, and Kateri.
Okay, beautiful, thank you. Questions, comments about that proclamation?
No, but I do think it's pretty important. You've heard me say before, you know, these kids we have to give them the best start we possibly can. And I think that recognizing the importance of this is a step in that direction. And they're 30% of our population, but 100% of our future. So.
Anything? Good job. The next presentation, or proclamation rather, Immunization Awareness.
Yes, it is also Immunization Awareness Month, and Jeannie Knight, our Communicable Disease Prevention Division Director, will be presenting this proclamation, or asking you to proclaim this proclamation and presenting it to 2 community partners who are going to be attending the following presentation on this agenda, which is about our back-to-school immunization clinics. So we will have guests from North Thurston Public Schools, Leslie Van Leeshout, she's Director of Student Support, and Jennifer Gold, who works for Together as their Community Schools Coordinator, and they will be accepting your proclamation for National Immunization Month to raise awareness of the importance of vaccinations. As you know, and we discussed last week when we covered this item, that our immunization rate in Thurston County is lower than what it needs to be. So we want to get the message out there to parents, especially as we approach back to school, to make sure their kids are up to date on their vaccinations.
Okay, anything?
Nope, sounds good.
I guess, yes, I would like to know, there's a lot of rhetoric we're going through here, but now in the reality of it, as time goes on, and I think last year we heard about measles, so I guess it was quite a bit. And then the reality of getting folks their proper shots before they're in school. Are there changes that are going to make this more feasible than what it's been in the past? And maybe cost has been an issue with some folks. I don't know where we're at, but what are we doing to do a better job?
In regards to measles specifically, the Washington State Legislature, gosh, I'm having trouble this morning, need more coffee, passed a law regarding exemptions and removed the personal exemption for the measles vaccine, and that went into effect in July. So we're hoping that more people will get their children the measles vaccine, and part of our efforts to help parents, especially those who may have difficulty accessing health care insurance or their regular providers, we're offering the free clinics, which we'll be covering in the back to school presentation. 3 different clinics throughout Thurston County that our Medical Reserve Corps will be offering to anyone, any child under age 18, 0 to 18, they can come to this clinic, get the required immunizations for free. And in addition to that, we work with our healthcare partners and providers throughout the county and do various other education and outreach efforts to raise the importance of immunizations.
So cost should not be an issue to some of these folks that maybe have held back in the past.
We provide opportunities for the free immunizations through our clinics and help to improve access to care for people to get insurance. Under the Affordable Care Act, vaccinations are free for children. So getting kids signed up for health care insurance, if they do not already have it, is really important in this effort as well.
Okay, thank you.
So are the schools then refusing entry to a child where the family cannot prove they've had their immunization for measles?
Every school has different requirements according to Washington state law. They all have the same requirements. Every school has different policies and procedures for how they handle that as far as children that may not be up to date depending on what the illness is. Our health officer has the authority vested in her to exclude children from school during an outbreak if necessary.
Is Dr. Wood in the audience? Oh, she is. Please, Dr. Wood.
Come on up, Dr. Wood. You can speak more to that.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, the schools will be checking to see if children are in compliance for the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. They will be looking at, and compliance is defined as either receiving the immunizations or getting an exemption. They can still get an exemption for a religious reason or for a medical reason.
Yeah.
So we're working with our partners, both the clinical group and with our school partners to help make this a smooth transition.
And pretty much just as the MMR, isn't it?
That's it for this state. In California, they got rid of all personal and philosophical exemptions for all vaccines.
Right. So that's measles, mumps, and rubella?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else?
No,
Yes,
cool, good.
So my office inquired with public health about potentially having a clinic location in Rochester, and hopefully that's acceptable to you guys. My understanding is you guys were checking into that or looking into possibility, so I just wanted to make sure you guys knew I made that request.
I didn't know that, and I like that, because it's going to Yelm, Lacey, and Tumwater?
Yes, Thursday, August 15th is the Little Red Schoolhouse, which is a large event that provides lots of free back-to-school supplies and other services for kids and families at Camacho Middle School. And then Thursday, August 22nd, it's in Tumwater at Peter G. Schmidt Elementary. And then on Saturday, September 21st, at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center on Lily Road near the Health Department office.
okay.
And yes, it is important for us to ensure that there's access to every child in our county and those living in rural areas, including Rochester and Commissioner Menzer's district. And while we don't have a clinic scheduled, we're looking into what kind of partnership we can perhaps do with ROOF and other schools in the rural areas to ensure that they have equal opportunity for access to
Brilliant. Yeah, good idea.
And I just want to say the timing of the ones that we just reported out to you is important because for measles, mumps, and rubella, you need to have 2 immunizations at least 28 days apart. So if you go on Thursday, August 15th or Thursday, August 22nd, you could get your first one and then follow up on Saturday the 21st, which would be 28 days after even the one on the 23rd, and then be in compliance.
Good, okay. Thank you for that. Anything? Good, thank you. Thank you, Doctor. That takes us to opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. And I'm not aware of anything or anyone or any issue. Are you, Shelley?
No, I am not aware, sir.
You got a tie? No. Gary?
Good once in a while not to have a controversy.
Yeah. Agenda item number 4, department items, the 2019 back-to-school clinics.
So yes, we just covered this item a little bit here. Jennifer Dixon, who's our Education and Outreach Program Assistant for our Emergency Preparedness Program, will be doing a presentation on the back-to-school immunization clinics that we just named, and also highlighting the great work of our Thurston County Medical Reserve Corps, who we really count on to make these great clinics happen. And it's also an experience for them to practice dispensing in case of an emergency, and we really need to do this in a larger scale way. So.
Okay. Anything on that?
No, sir.
Nope. Agenda item number 5, kindergarten readiness.
So Liz Davis, our division director, who's here today, if you have any questions about this, will be presenting along with community partners, Jennifer Williams Forrester, who's executive director of the South Sound Reading Foundation, and Gary Burris, who's executive director of the Child Care Action Council. And together they will be presenting on the importance of kindergarten readiness and discussing different things that parents can do and things that are happening to help better prepare our kids for kindergarten, because children in Thurston County are not as prepared as they should be for kindergarten to have the skills that they need to succeed in school and for long term.
All right, anything?
My wife's a kindergarten teacher, so she will appreciate this.
No, sir.
And that takes us to item number 6, department item again, Thurston County homelessness update.
Yes, so Keely Marino, your homeless and affordable housing coordinator, who is also here in the audience, if you have any questions, will be providing a brief presentation on the efforts to ensure that people who are experiencing homelessness during a time of critical public health needs, such as during a wildfire when the air quality is poor, and what the Hazardous Weather Task Force is planning and preparing for to keep people warm and safe and healthy during the upcoming cold weather season, which runs from October through the end of March.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I thought, can I ask Dr. Wood a question? Sure. So you gave a presentation about the air quality it's kind of a warning system that we're working on, different
Yes.
colors.
Yeah.
And I guess I never thought about the connection there between homelessness and those air quality warnings. I mean, you know, all the things that you said that we should be doing are probably things that are very difficult for certain folks to do in those circumstances.
Correct.
And so I guess I'm wondering what the worst case scenario, we have air quality like we had last summer. What is the magnitude of the health effect on folks that are out there unsheltered? How serious can it get? How fast, I guess? I know that's a broad question, but...
I believe that people should be educated on the air quality and take steps. The best thing is, if you can't go indoors, is to leave the area. Keely has been in on our discussions because she's very in tune with the people who have no shelter, and a lot of them will not want to leave where they are staying. So if they could go to a shelter that has better air quality, that's an option. Leaving the area is an option. If they choose to, as we might say, an emergency preparedness shelter in place, there are steps that may be helpful, but the risk is still there. Masks are an option, but as we discussed at the presentation, if they're not fit tested, you're still going to get particulate matter coming in, and if you are a child, the mask won't fit you, and if you have facial hair, the mask won't fit you. So that is a concern of mine. I'm concerned of long-term consequences to people's health, and hope that they would make a choice to seek shelter.
So my long-term consequences, like what does that look like? What is the first most common thing that happens to folks who are taking a long-term exposure to that kind of air quality that we had last summer?
Well, people will notice it first with itchy eyes, sore throat, then they'll likely start to cough, and if they already have before the event, things like asthma, or they have an acute respiratory infection, they're going to start to feel short of breath, and I would hope they would seek medical care.
You done?
Yeah.
And hopefully, before we get to the cold weather, hopefully there's a significant amount of warm, hot weather still coming for the rest of summer. So do we have, I know it's a plan, but we have things in place for the cold weather, so there's cooling stations?
I'll
Hot
let
weather, rather.
Keely speak to that.
Okay, Keely can do that.
But what I would say is it's always advisable to pray for rain, but not too much. So I actually, because I've been working on the woodland fire smoke, every time it rains, I'm actually happy.
Overnight only?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, welcome Keely.
Thank you. Keely Marino, Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator with Public Health and Social Services. So were you asking about cold weather shelter preparation or for this?
Still for the remainder of summer. It's only the 13th of August, and hopefully there's a significant amount of summer left.
Right.
And we have cooling stations.
So what we've set up now is, in the past, we contracted with shelters to increase capacity only from November to the end of April, or March, so for just that cold weather season, but we are presenting them, and they're signing annual contracts, so they will begin on September 1. So if there is a need for expanding shelter capacity because of hot weather or because of poor air quality, those shelters that are identified as our cold weather shelters will be able to expand capacity for adverse or negative air quality. Likewise, Interfaith Works will receive a contract to expand staffing for the community care center because they're not traditionally open on Saturdays, or they're not open on Saturdays, so that would make it possible for the community care center to be open on a Saturday, as well as another contract that will be in place for the first time to ensure that sheltering in place activities can occur at any point that there is a hazardous weather event throughout our season, be it heat, be it smoke, be it cold, rain, ice rain, or snow, where they can purchase survival gear and go out into the unmanaged encampments and ensure that people have access to survival gear. So we have a much more robust plan this year for addressing hazardous weather events.
So it sounds like the trigger is date-driven rather than temperature-driven.
Not anymore. No, it was for cold weather and expanded shelter capacity. It still is November to the end of March to make sure that we have those beds throughout the winter. However, if there is a call for expanded shelter capacity, now they have access to funds that they can expand at any point of the year.
Good, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seemed kind of weird, you know, you can't have a cooling center because it's only 96 and not 97
Right.
outside, or it's 32 and not 33.
Exactly.
Or whatever, so I'm glad that changed a while back. Questions or comments?
I do want to comment on the cooling center portion of this. I hate to see government waste money, and they try to fix everything for everybody. 50-some years ago, I was in the Army in very miserable conditions and humidity, hot, and we had a very simple solution to that if you wanted to get comfortable, if you had the time to get comfortable. Put your foot in a bucket of water that's just out of the ground, tap water, out of a creek, whatever it is. I don't think we need to be getting into air conditioning and all kinds of other expenditures of government money when we've got a very simple fix that is available. So I'm just going to throw that out. Let's capitalize on what works. It doesn't cost much.
Bless you. Was that your feet in water and a can of Spam?
Well, whatever works.
Anything on that?
I don't think I understand the trigger, like, your comment sort of confused me with so what would be the thing that would open up additional shelter capacity in the heat, in a hot day?
So that would be, in our hazardous weather response plan, it is identified that the Director of Public Health and Social Services and the Public Health Officer would receive recommendations from the Hazardous Weather Task Force in order to declare a hazardous weather event. So in the past, we called them Code Blue, but we didn't want to get into code coloring everything, so we're just calling them hazardous weather events at this point. So it would be a consultation within the Hazardous Weather Task Force, a recommendation to the Director of Public Health and the Public Health Officer, who would then determine whether or not a declaration is made for a hazardous weather event response.
Got it.
And I will just add that we work closely with Thurston County Emergency Management, because when there is extreme heat advisories or other weather events, there's broader shelters that sometimes open, and we try to coordinate our communications to get that out to the public as much as possible. But again, the population that we're trying to address through the hazardous weather response is vulnerable populations that, as Dr. Wood mentioned, often have severe chronic health conditions that make them more at risk for death and illness and needing to be transported to the hospital, which then has adverse impacts on the system for everyone.
Answer your question.
Yep.
Keely, where are you with the 5-year plan?
Oh, well, I just turned in my draft of the narrative and draft of the
You
work
say
plan.
resignation?
So that's all in the director's hands to do an overview of looking at both the narrative and the work plan. And then our team in housing are going to be supplementing it with some appendices and getting it all tidied up. And then it will also go to Pam Gant over in TST to make it look really nice. So we're getting there.
From Pam, then where does it go?
It will come to you.
To here,
On
okay.
September 12th. I'll be providing you a briefing on the 5-year plan.
Just a month away, good.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Questions or comments?
No, sir.
Anything more, Ty?
No.
Great. Do you have anything else to add?
No? Nice to
Great.
see you all.
You too, Keely. Thank you, Keely. Department item number 7, Climate Change Mitigation Plan.
And for this item, I will ask Chris Hawkins to come join me at the table in case you have any questions about the climate mitigation plan itself or what the climate action team has been up to. But I will share with you also that Deputy Mayor from City of Lacey, Cynthia Pratt, will be in attendance for this presentation, and there may be others as well, I understand. Pass it over to Chris.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So this item is really an update on activities that the county has been involved with, helping to facilitate a climate and clean energy work group within Thurston Thrives, but also updating you on the progress of the climate mitigation plan that the county is working on with the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. So it's really an opportunity to hear a little bit about what's been going on there. I'll cover a little bit of the basics of climate change and its relationship to health. and then go into some of the current, well, actually sort of activities that have been going on over the last several years, and then what's been happening in the last year with the climate mitigation plan process. But also wanted to give an opportunity for some of the partners, in this case, the City of Lacey is interested in doing this, just updating you on some of their current activities that even will precede the finish of the climate mitigation plan. So she wanted to be able to say some things about the City of Lacey's efforts on setting up new electric vehicle charging stations and some similar efforts that the City of Lacey is undertaking. But it does provide an opportunity also if you were interested in mentioning some of the things that the county is considering working on that are current sort of early actions that I think you've been having some discussions of. This would be a chance to mention that if you were so inclined. I will try to complete my remarks within 10 minutes out of that 15-minute item, and then leave some time for either questions or your comments.
Are you reading my brain?
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Any questions on that?
No, sir.
And to that, I wasn't saying about your presentation specifically. I'm saying these are just maximums. It's not a challenge to maximize it.
Right.
So if it's fewer than 15, that's great.
Excellent.
But it's all your time, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then we move into the Board of Health members reporting on public health and social services involvement since the last meeting, the health officer's report, and the director's report. And you want to talk about those or just wait?
We'll just be providing general overview. Dr. Wood will be covering some activities on notifiable conditions and some other things that she has been involved in and working on over this past month. And I will be sharing some highlights from our department that impact the health of our community and share the good work. And that should conclude our meeting on time.
Anything? My seatmates, nothing?
No,
County
sir.
manager, anything?
Nope. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That will conclude the meeting for the Board of Health. Now we're going to talk about the BoCC meeting, alleged BoCC meeting for August the 20th.
Yes, Commissioners. And before we go into the specific items, as you will see, the Tuesday, August 20th, 2019 agenda is pretty slim. And again, it's just that time of the year. We only have one department item, and we have a couple of consent items. Leading to the upside meeting that you have scheduled in Yelm on August 27th. And I'm planning to have a little bit of a different agenda for that, for the 27th, where the Departments of Public Works, Public Health, Administrative Services, and CPID will give 10-minute presentation. It's just that's an opportunity for the community to hear and listen what those departments do. And we're also going to have a small agenda, business agenda matters. So my suggestion is for you is to probably move these items to the 27th, and perhaps you consider canceling next week's board meeting. That we really don't have much of a.
And I'm not here on the 20th, so.
Because you're out all week, aren't you then?
All week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Right, Gary.
Is this Public Works issue a time-sensitive issue?
And this is and the Public Works Director is right here, so she can probably answer that. This is awarding the contract for Albany Street. If it's a time-sensitive issue, we may consider bringing this item for this afternoon if that is the case.
We have talked about it.
Not to put you on the spot, Jennifer.
Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. Typically, when we put them up there, we've got it all planned out to be able to award on that day. If we can accelerate it and move it up till today, that would be great. I can make sure we have somebody here to present it.
Well, I think it's a good idea when there's no staple in the agenda that if we can consolidate it somewhere else, that's a wise plan.
That's the first takeaway, yeah.
And if you guys, my seatmates, are comfortable with moving this to today's agenda, we can do that.
And we move the rest of the items for the 27th.
Yeah,
Will that work?
that'll give us more time, a little bit more time on the 27th.
If the Director from Public Works agrees that you can get this on to us, I'm all for it.
Yep, thank
So
you.
moving into
And-
today and dispensing with next week's agenda, or next week's BoCC and putting it all to the 27th.
Yeah, as Commissioner Mason stated, that will work since he's going to be out of the office.
I don't want to mess up my perfect attendance record, so I appreciate it.
There you go, okay.
There's no bonus at the end of the year, you know?
So within
guess
your period, we can
certificate,
probably review these items, knowing that perhaps we'll move those to
Yep.
different meetings. Okay. So you have a presentation from the Office of Public Defense where Patrick O'Connor, the director, will introduce the new Defense Attorney 1. His name is Mubarak Abdur Rahim. And I think some of us met him on the employee orientation. And I believe there's one more vacancy that Patrick has and is in the works to have a full staff level. I will work with Patrick whether the introduction will actually make sense to travel to Yelm or not, or maybe at a later date. So you may or may not see this item on the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's flexible enough.
Right. The next item for your consideration, I'm sorry.
The opportunity for
driving
the
the
public
agenda.
to address the board, that should be interesting in Yelm. That'll be fun.
Yep.
I would imagine we'll have some comment down there. Did you have anything in particular about the public comment?
No.
Okay. Then we'll get to the county manager's update.
Yeah, and again, I will follow up if, depending on any public testimony you receive, will be
Okay.
received before then.
And then consent items A and B. The first one's the reclassification of a position in the assessor's office.
Yeah, the assessor's office, you have entertained and approved a couple of actions related to personnel matters. And again, this is an attempt for him to do the right alignment of the different job classifications to meet the business needs of his office. So the particular request for your consideration is to reclassify a commercial property appraisal position to an appraisal supervisor. As he stated, this is a critical position to maintain deadlines and to assist with the growing workloads in the field appraisers and the appeals team. This particular action will have an impact that goes, the salary will go from $6,390 to $7,044. That will be a $654 increase a month, or just about 10%. And at this point, the office is planning to absorb within the current budget allocation.
Okay.
And again, the numbers that I give you is the high level impact. An individual who moves into that position may not be at that top level. So I'm just giving you the high end.
Got it. Anything? Anything?
No, sir.
Nope, that's good. That's consent item A. The next one, B, is the voucher list, and we'll know about that when we get there.
Yep.
And the department item number 4 will move to this afternoon.
To this afternoon. And I believe you're aware of this particular project. This is located on Albany Street in the Rochester area. It's to retrofit stormwater pond. On August 1st, 2019, the department received 12 bids, and the lower bid was Pivetta Brothers Construction Incorporated of Sumner, Washington. The low bid was $879,016. The department is requesting for you to award the contract with an additional 10% deviation to cover any unexpected items during construction for a total of $966,918. The cost will be covered by a grant from the Department of Ecology. This is the Stream Flow Restoration Grant, and the match requirements for this grant will be covered by the Stormwater Utility Fund.
Yeah, what's the percentage on that? What do we have to put out of the fire?
I'll double check, but I think it's 80-20.
Okay.
Anything? Okay with that. All right. Then moving to the county managers, and you'll have that in 2 weeks' time. And that will take care of the August 20th meeting that is moved to August 27th. Got it. Now we're moving into proclamations and awards.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Welcome, Anita Beaumar, Clerk of the Board. Up for discussion first is going to be your August proclamation. Emergency Services is presenting the National Preparedness Month, and that would be at the August 27th board meeting in Yelm. They are, Vivian Eason will be here to present, of course, and the director, Kurt Harden. That proclamation has been signed by the board.
Okay. Anything on that proclamation?
No, sir.
Nope. Okay.
The next proclamation I just received yesterday afternoon. It's for the week of August 19th to be Olympia Salvation Army Corps Week. This was presented by Gregory Moe. He is involved in that organization and is waiting to see if we are going to be able to put it on today's agenda. It is in your packet. I have a draft ready for your review. And he does apologize for the last minute notification of trying to get that on. Since we are not having a board
It's on
meeting.
the backside.
Does he?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Since we're not having a board meeting on the 20th, I was unsure, and he is requesting we have it sooner than later.
That's the week of the 19th.
Yes.
That makes sense.
But also this proclamation outlines the 130th anniversary in which Salvation Army came to Olympia. They came to Olympia on August 21st to 1889. So this proclamation, in addition to celebrate the Salvation Army Week, is also celebrating 130 years Salvation Army presence in Olympia.
At the bottom of this proclamation, there's a couple, I think there's typos.
Okay.
Because in capital letters, it says Army Day, but at the top, it's Army
Yes.
Week. And then you probably, there's a capital letter there that probably should be small, but it's a day, it's a week, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And after day, the "in" should not be capitalized.
Yeah, that's what I was
Thank you.
saying. I mean, I guess I'd be a little concerned about having a proclamation. I mean, there's a lot of social service organizations that do a lot of things. I guess the historical component of this makes it somewhat unique since they've been here so long, and this is a kind of an anniversary of sorts. But
I don't recall in past years the commissions have proclaimed Salvation Army Week. So this is new. And it really is up to the board whether they would like to entertain this item for this afternoon.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I would like to say that I would like to recognize the Salvation Army for all the work that they've done for over 100 years. I think the time that they've been here compared to the other good organizations in the county should be recognized. So I'm in favor, especially with what we're dealing with now, with homelessness being ever more important and their role in working with that. I think it's well worth recognizing what they do in our community and what they've done for over 100 years in our community.
I'm assuming that this is one that we're doing this year because of 130th, and so we wouldn't see it next year because...
Again, I've not had a proclamation for this organization in this format. They've come various times to talk about their services, but not have proclaimed anything before the Board of County Commissioners since I've been here. And it is their 130th, has been stated. But this is not a regular proclamation that we receive every year.
And where I sit on this, when I look at it, I like to see it because it's such a strong partner in Thurston County, and because, as my seatmate Commissioner Menzer says, it's 130th. I wouldn't expect it to come back every year. And Commissioner Edwards, they're such a significant partner in our major social issues today in Thurston County. I'm in favor of putting this on for today if we can, so it's timely. But I wouldn't expect it to be a routine annual event or proclamation.
I will make those changes that you have pointed out, the week and the little I and the in. and make sure I get it around to you for signatures.
What does Gregory Moe do for the Salvation Army? Do you know what position he serves on the board?
I believe that he just serves on the board.
I had no idea he did that.
I don't know all the particulars, but I know he's been an active advocate for the services that Salvation Army provides for our community for years.
He's a busy man. Okay, next, Lon.
The next proclamation for September, actually, is going to be our September 11th, National Day of Service and Remembrance. And that proclamation, I just have a very draft. I'm not looking for finalization right this moment. I will be sending it around as soon as I can make some reviews and changes.
Okay.
That will be in the September 10th agenda.
Yes.
No, 9th.
Oh, thank you.
That'll be on the September 10th agenda?
Yes, it's September 9th is a Monday.
Monday, okay. So this will come around to us for review and such?
Yes.
So it won't take time now. Any questions or comments on that one?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Lon. That takes us to the boards and commissions.
Yes, in your packet, you have a couple of applications for the Fair Board. The first application is from one of the youth, and her application is, and a brief description of her activities is attached, and also she has provided a picture of her and her friendly goat.
What immaculate printing.
I know.
Oh, my goodness. That's great.
That's a sheep, isn't it?
Is it?
What
Okay, my
is?
bad.
It's a shaved sheep.
And I do apologize if you are watching. But I had to include it because it was just so unique. So we have two applications for the Fair Board, and the other one is from a Kathy McWade.
Look at that. I tell you, seeing these kids at the fair last week with other animals was way, way cool.
Yes.
They're all excited and proper and worried and nervous, and it's just fun to see. Any questions or comments regarding Ms. Ramirez?
No, sir. I'd like to see her on there.
And we're looking for a thumbs up?
Would you like to have this item this afternoon or for the 27th?
Why, sure, I would.
Wait, isn't she, she's from Yelm.
Yeah, I think she's
Shouldn't we put her on for Yelm?
So
Okay.
Save her a little bit
there
of a
you go.
drive?
Good catch. Good catch, yeah, doing Yelm, yep.
That would be wonderful.
Good catch, yeah. But she's got to bring her sheep.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
That's acceptable in Yelm.
Yes, it is.
It wouldn't be here.
Maybe you may consider having this appointment if she attends the meeting as an actual agenda item, not in the consent. That will give you an opportunity to
You bet, yes.
have a conversation
yeah.
with that.
If she writes that well, you got to see her, right hear her speak.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I will make sure to get a hold of.
What a smart cookie. I tell you what, 100% of our future, I'm telling you. Perfect attendance. Just going for your record.
There you go.
4.0 GPA, good gravy. Now that's encouraging. All right, next.
And I will give you time to review Kathy McWade. She is also applying for the Fair Board as a Commissioner District 2 representative.
is this brand new?
Yes, it is.
She says she's now the president of the Thurston County Fair Foundation. Is that, I guess I'm just asking, is that a good, is there any conflict, or there's no, have we had Fair Foundation members as board members before, or I'm not entirely sure of the relationship.
I am not aware of any particular conflict, but
Nor am I, but it does, obviously it goes to community involvement to the point of leadership. But as well, she was in the JCs for over 15 years. That's the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And I was in the JCs in the 70s. And it's a great leadership, community involved organization. I did it for like 5 years or 7 years. She did it for 15. I mean, so that by itself to me speaks volumes about her, and that she currently is the president of the Fair Board, the Fair Foundation, rather.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Thumbs up?
Yep.
Thumbs up. And do you want that on today then?
It is up to you whether it's today or the 27th.
Because she's local.
Today?
So we'll bring it up for today's agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
might as well
you.
Fill it as soon as we can. And next,
Area Agency on Aging, I was able to get a hold of the staff, and they're still working on this discussion of the applicant, Judy Stratton. They haven't given me any other information other than that.
there's no rush other than it's the Area Agency on Aging. And how long has it been pending?
It has been pending,
Like 3-4 months?
no,
Few meetings.
she submitted her application on July the 7th.
Oh my God, okay, all right. So we'll just wait to hear back from you?
Yes.
They'll be getting back to us.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's all that I have at this time.
That's it. Thank you, Law. Was there anything regarding the letter from Katrina Van Every? Letter?
We reviewed that letter a couple of weeks now, and it's there for reminder.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to move right into the Pio Check-In.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Brian.
Just a few quick updates. So the first episode of Commissioner Hutchings' 3-part series on civility is airing now. That was released on Friday, August 9th. It highlights a conversation he had with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Washington Middle School. People can find that on our YouTube channel or on Comcast Channel 3. Highly recommend it. It's a good episode. And then, as Romero mentioned earlier, as part of this year's communications plan, we're holding our second off-site meeting on Tuesday, August 27th at the Yale Middle School, and the meeting will begin at 5:30 p.m. There will be a third meeting that will be held later this year, but we haven't determined a date or location yet, but information will go out to the public when that's determined. And then on August 4th, we recognized the 45th anniversary of Medic 1. So Commissioner Edwards is going to be covering Medic 1 and how they work with TCOM to provide critical life-saving services to the Thurston County community for the September episode of Thurston County Connection. So I'll be working with his office on getting that produced. Pending any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Brian? Anything?
So the civility series, that's not Thurston County Connections?
That is a Thurston County Connection. It's just going to air in weekly segments instead of being one weekly. Instead of just being a monthly show. It's going to be a 3-part series, but it is part of the Thurston County Connection.
And then my other comment was on the third off-site board meeting. I don't know what locations you're thinking about, but one thing that I heard from, like in the city of Lacey, they did an off-site meeting in the northeast part of their city. And I mean, you know, it's not that large of an area compared to Thurston County, and you'd think that that people that were really interested could make it their way to Lacey City Council, but apparently it was a huge hit, and it was, I mean, even within Lacey, having it off-site in a neighborhood was a huge hit, and they had a huge turnout, and they had a lot of people. So I'm saying that because I would have been thinking of the most far-flung areas of the county, Yelm and Rochester, meeting that bill, but we might want to do it in somewhere like Northeast Lacey, or, you know, it seems like there's good response to doing it in any sort of part of our county. It doesn't always have to be the most southern or the most remote. So I'm just throwing that out there as something to put on your list maybe when you're trying to think about where the last meeting ought to be.
Yeah, that's definitely good feedback. Our third meeting will be in District 1. So our first meeting was District 3. This one's District 2, and the third one will be in District 1.
For District 1.
So probably be in a a more populated area of the county, I imagine. So.
South Bay Grange Hall and Open Johnson Point, I don't know.
That's what I was thinking, somewhere in District 1, yeah. Yeah. Anything else for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then briefing, public hearing decisions pending?
Nothing's pending,
None.
Commissioners.
Then it is now 10:11. I'll color it 10:10. Let's take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:20, please, 10:20. Thank you. game faces, folks.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. And it is still August 13th, 2019, and we're resuming the work session of the Board of County Commissioners. Can we start again? Welcome back. It's August 13th, 2019, and we're continuing on with the Board of County Commissioner work session. And I'm going to turn the mic over to County Manager Ramiro Chavez.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. I failed to bring a matter to your attention, and this will be included on this afternoon's County Manager's report. So thank you, Commissioner Messer, for the reminder. So this afternoon, I will bring a set of sad news. As you may know, Mr. Lester Eldridge has passed away. He served as a Board of County Commissioner in 1982. That was his first term. And then he served 2 additional terms. I believe he served as a Board of County Commissioner for 3 terms. And also he has been very active in the community. And I will make sure that I will give a little bit of a background what he did in the community. And that time will give you the opportunity to highlight his community service.
And when we do that?
During the County Manager's report this afternoon.
And if you can find it, I have it on my calendar. There's a celebration of life for Les down at Personal Landing.
Yes, and that is on
September.
Yeah, there's on September 22nd.
22nd.
Yeah. It's in the Swantown Marina.
Swantown, that's it. Thank you, Swantown Marina.
Put that on our list.
Bless his heart.
They don't have the time.
And his family.
Yeah.
Just details.
Thank you for remembering that very much.
And then I will elaborate on his service this afternoon.
We're now heading into commissioner items, and the first one up is Park Impact Fee Report and Funding, and this is a discussion. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. This is timely information the Public Works is going to be presenting to you. You will be moving into the budget deliberations for the major update for the 2020 biennial year. And this is not a new news to you. The funding related to the park's operations is an issue. And the department is going to walk you through where we are, perhaps providing some options as you will move into the budget deliberations.
Yep. Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. We have 2 items to talk about. First is our Park Impact Fee, our annual report. So we'll be presenting the 2018 report. So Karen Weiss will go through that. Karen is the Financial Manager for Public Works, and then Carrie Hibden is the Parks Manager. Mr. Parks. So that's the first item. The second item is going to be informing you and providing you some additional information and some possible options for your consideration during next week's work sessions regarding the midterm budget. So with that,
2 weeks.
Karen, in 2 weeks. Whoa.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. In front of you, you should have a graph that says Parks Impact Fee 2018 report. This is an annual report required to give the Commissioners a status update on monies collected for the year and expenditures and what those project expenditures were. So this report fulfills that requirement. So for the fiscal year ending 2018, we brought in $682,000 in revenue. Of that, about $650,000 of that was Park Impact Fee. You can see from the last 3 years, and when I project 2019, we are bringing in about over $600,000 each year, somewhere in the $630,000 range is the average. So our collections to date are $2.6 million since that impact fee program was implemented at the county. Our expenditures thus far are $333,713. You can see the 4 projects that those funds have been expended on thus far, and so that leaves us at the end of 2018 with a balance of funding of $2.3 million. So not to panic there, however, over the next 4-year period of time, we do have about $2 million of funding slated to be used on capital projects, on the capital facilities plan. And in fact, you're pretty well aware, I think, with the BNSF Bridge project, and that's about $1 million of funding for the 2019 fiscal year. So we are not currently in jeopardy of needing to return the funding. It must be obligated or spent within 10 years of receipt, and so, with this timeline and those projects budgeted at this point, we should be in a fine place. Just a reminder, the projects that are selected must have a growth or capacity component, and we are currently leveraging those with REAP funding to be able to advance those projects. And then just a side note also that the Parks Impact Fee revenue that we bring in is established based on level of service, and we currently have a level of service that has been established by the commissioners in the county. We are reviewing the Parks Impact Fee study. We're updating that, and also the Parks Recreation and Open Space Plan is going through a review, and as that, the board will be brought back the discussion on level of service, and so whatever that decision is could impact in the future the amount of Parks Impact Fees that we bring in, because it's a calculation of that level of service. So, are there any questions on the
No?
He's looking at me.
Do you have any questions?
Well, this is brought in the aggregate, but my understanding was that there was some sort of geographical limitation, like you can only spend in the area where...
That's true for transportation impact fees, not for
park impact fees.
It's
Oh,
for
okay.
a regional provider, and so they can be spent wherever.
So if we spend, that can go back and count toward the earliest ones that were brought in,
Correct.
regardless of where we spend them?
Correct.
Okay.
Great, Gary.
Could you give us a breakdown on what funds are dedicated to what activities? Because people wonder why we don't have adequate resources to have, for an example, personnel to keep our parks up.
Or trails.
Yeah.
So Parks Impact Fees can only be used for capital projects, and the projects that are funded through the Parks Impact Fee have to have a growth and development component to them. And then we couple that with REAT 2 funding, which also can only be used for capital projects. So again, we have funding available for infrastructure and capital development, but neither of those funds can be used for maintenance and operations. And Romero, did you?
Go ahead, Romero.
So related to that, I had an initial conversation with Deborah Manguia, as well as Eric Johnson from WASAC, the executive director, and started having a conversation as to how we're going to be introduce some legislation in the upcoming legislative session to include only on the park impact fees up to 20% for M&O. I reviewed some language yesterday, proposed language. I need to circle back a little bit more. And that is the intent. It was well received, I believe, by Eric Johnson. At some point, I mentioned to you that perhaps we needed to add as a whole all the traffic impact fees, including transportation. His perspective was that perhaps that might be a higher hurdle to cross, but narrowing down to park impact fees and up to 20%. That might be something they might be supporting. So I just want to give you some update on that. At some point, I will bring some proposals to you as part of your legislative session, in specific RCWs and pieces of the law that you may consider. But I'm working on that, just to let you know on that.
In the past 5 or 10 years, not going back 30 or 40, has that been proposed before and failed?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And it might be the first time?
It's the first time, and as when I talked to Eric Johnson, said it will not be a precedent setting, since the real estate excise tax allows for a certain amount of M&O, and also the conservation features also allow some expenditures for maintenance and operation. So it will be the same concept. But again, I'm working on that, just to give you an update.
And it doesn't cost any more, it's just allowing us to shift.
Right, it's not an additional fees, no.
All right, go ahead.
On the Rochester projects, I know we're trying to fund those through our community development block grant, but if there were shortfalls or there were additional elements that maybe is this money available then? Because when we first talked about that, I think we were both under the misimpression that there was a limitation on the geographical limitation, and there might not be enough park funding for a big project in Rochester, but it sounds like that's not a limitation at all. So is that something that is that something that's a possibility if we needed it? Because in that case, you're already doing some capital upgrade. So the M&O issue is going to have to be addressed one way or the other anyway. So that would seem to be an obvious place to do additional upgrades, if there were obvious elements that didn't get covered by the CDBG.
Sure. I think both of those facilities right now are not owned by the county. And so in order to spend park impact fee money, it's either got to be owned, it's got to be a nonprofit or owned by the county, but then we also have to have ongoing maintenance, so agreement for maintenance and operations of it. So certainly we're looking at what other opportunities there are down there, but for these two specific ones, not yet.
I know Ramiro and I talked about the possibility of having sort of you had some ideas, creative ideas about having sort of an overview where we have kind of a formalistic overview of M&O, but we don't.
So
necessarily do the
related to
day-to-day.
those two projects, we just sent award letters to the school districts as well as the Husfield. I believe when we asked for those two institutions to send us on a specific scope of work by December. And I believe when we know what is it that we're planning to do, we'll bring those items again to have a larger conversation and perhaps looking for opportunities. Whether we can probably find a way as to how we can bridge the requirements of M&O through a new local agreement perhaps. Something like that may be a discussion that needs to happen maybe later in the year. But until we know what on a specific scope of work they would like to do, it will not give us an indication as to how much money.
No, I get it. I'm just talking theoretically, because when we talked earlier in the year.
Then yes, theoretically, yes.
There were other obstacles, and now I'm hearing that those obstacles aren't necessarily there, and if we needed it, that's a conversation we could have.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other counties are faced with this same problem, isn't that right? This isn't good. We're not going to be asking the Association of Counties to take this on just for us. Aren't other counties
No,
faced?
I mean for the M&O for park impact fees, it will apply to all counties, yes, because the law applies to all counties. Yeah. And that is why I had a meeting with the executive director of WASAC just to make sure that he understands perhaps what the county is after.
And he was amenable to it.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, okay. And he understood the problem and the challenges, and also he certainly saw the opportunities with this proposal.
All right.
But at some point, I'll bring this more formally for your consideration.
When does that BNSF project kick off?
I don't think we have a firm date yet. I think roughly looking at
Microphone, Carrie. Microphone, Carrie.
Sorry.
Thank you. And introduce yourself.
Carrie, Parks Manager with Thurston County Public Works.
Until
the end of the year.
That's right. Or longer.
Wanted to get that on record, right? Yeah.
And beyond.
We don't have a firm date yet before us for the Burlington Northern Tunnel, but roughly we're looking at the September timeframe and maybe a little bit beyond that. That's where we are today anyway.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I guess not on that piece.
And any of the park stuff?
Yeah, one more item.
Okay.
We're done, yeah. Are we done with parks impact fees?
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, and with that discussion, we'll segue into our 2020 midterm budget. Over the next few weeks, you'll be seeing the proposals ahead of you or in front of you for the 2020 midterm. And I just want to remind us of where we were and what you're going to see. So when we put together the biennial budget proposal for 2019 and 20 for parks, You may recall, or you may not, we had originally asked for about $75,000 in general funds to support that program. We came to you with some level of service proposals. We looked very closely at the budget, and we were able to, in the 19 budget, reduce our ask to about $20,000 from the original proposal. At the time, we felt like that we had put forward a reasonable and realistic budget, recognizing that we were going to have some reduced level of service throughout the year. And that was all in an attempt to minimize our impact on the general fund, given the budget situation. We have subsequently found that that's really just not a realistic budget for us to work within. There are just not adequate funding resources for us to maintain even a reduced level of service. We have managed within the budget through 2019 by leaving positions unfilled, not using extra help, and also capitalized on this one-time opportunity to have the BNSF project, right, the large project. When we, and I think you may be hearing through the public, some of the ramifications of that level of service decline. When we put together the 2020 midterm budget and gathered all the information, in front of you, you have a graph that's sort of supposed to tell the story. So originally, our 2020 budget was supposed to be $819,000 for 2020. It is currently $913,000 coming forward in the budget, and that approximate $100,000 increase is due to some payroll reallocations. We were over allocating to capital projects, and that just was not a realistic allocation of those positions. $17,000 in indirect and interfund costs, and that has come about through just more proper allocation of indirect costs to the Parks Fund. An increase of $31,000 in ER&R costs, and additional $8,000 for some parks reservation software that had been funded by Public Health and Social Services in its entirety before, which was not proper because we were also using that reservation service. So the net result of those changes is about $913,000 budget. We currently have about $130,000 budget shortfall with that budget. Our current funding is just under $800,000, and you can see the building blocks of that. We have conservation futures, a small amount of general funds, some other revenues, and then $250,000 that supports our trails system as an extension of our transportation through the roads fund. What you will see, I guess I would also say that during this time period, we have worked really hard to decrease costs, gain efficiencies, maximize our revenue, and I'm just going to highlight a few of those. We have an MOU with WDFW for the Boston Harbor restroom maintenance. We have we've worked on an agreement to no longer support the maintenance and operations on the Griffin Athletic Field. We have had a derelict boat that was removed in 2019, which there was honestly no funding available within our 19 budget because it was so tight to cover that, and Carrie pursued an opportunity for reimbursement with DNR, and that was about a $7,000 reimbursement, so about a 90% cost reimbursement for taking care of that derelict boat, which we are required to do. We've been working with the Black Lakes Special District to reduce the Black Lake fees on the Kinnydale Park, and that's currently about $12,000 a year, and Carrie's been working with the group to potentially reduce those up to 75%. We are working with our stormwater team to look at our stormwater fees on our properties and get either a rate reduction or exemption on that program. We are looking at different software for reservations to try to reduce that cost, and we're also selecting our capital projects based on their opportunities to reduce maintenance and operations costs. And then finally, we're looking at an inventory of our parcels and potentially having a discussion about if some of those could be relinquished or sold. So I would say that we've been working really hard and looking at our budget and trying to contain costs, but I'll tell you those are kind of nickel and dime things when it comes down to supporting our budget. So we are coming to you, like I said, you'll see our request in a budget change request here coming up, and that is for an additional funding to solve our shortfall project for 2020, and that is an additional $100,000 of general fund and an additional $30,000 from the roads fund. However, we are also coming forward for your consideration with another option, and that is a levy shift, a $500,000 levy shift, which, as Jennifer would say, she can't believe those words are coming out of our mouths, but to provision those funds for the Parks and Trails program. And that would be potentially, could be a short-term solution while we pursue some of these other options that may be available to us, as in the parks impact fee, maintenance and operations costs. My experience in working with the legislature is that that may not be a one-year effort, that may be a longer-term effort. This also creates some good opportunities because we should, best practices for industry, we should be setting aside the Parks and Trails as a standalone fund. So that would provide a mechanism to do that potentially in the 21-22 budget. Would help us with cash flow so we can meet some of these contingencies and emergencies that come up. So we feel like it is a reasonable solution that provides the commissioners potentially the opportunity to explore and solve our short-term issue without creating additional general fund strain. Jennifer, did you want to add anything to that?
I think, you know, when I first started here, one of the items that was an issue and has continued to be an issue is the parks program and just the lack of funding. And so I think Karen did a really good job identifying the different strategies that we've put in place to cut costs, to gain efficiencies where we can. But the level of effort that it takes on a weekly basis to manage to stay within the budget that we have is extensive. Because it's so tied to what we can bill for capital projects. So if we're short on a capital project, now we have to shift people over into parks, and we can't pay for that. And so it is extensive. And so we are looking for some assistance to give some breathing room as we try to manage those facilities.
So I have a few questions, but I'll turn to my seatmates first.
Well, can you just go back over the two, you just kind of laid out two possible ways to bridge the 120.
So
Can
the
you
two
just go
options
walk me through that a little slower?
Sure. We have put in a policy change request which would come to the board, and we would be asking for additional $100,000 of general fund support and transferring an additional $30,000 from the roads fund to support our trails as an extension of our transportation system. Currently, we are using funds from the road fund to support the trails transportation element of our program. Okay, and that on this graph is $250,000 currently. The second option is a proposed $500,000 levy shift. Okay, so that would be from roads fund that would go over to the general fund, but be budget proviso for the Parks and Trails program. So, yes.
So if you did that, then there would be, the levy shift would be the funding from the road fund.
Correct.
And you would no longer bill trail costs to the road fund.
Nope.
Correct. The Parks and Trails program would then be able to be its standalone program, and we would levy, yes. And so the net impact from the standpoint of the roads fund is about $250,000 because we are currently using $250,000. Additional, correct. It's not a new 500,000. It's basically a net impact to the roads of $250,000. But this, again, positions us better for cash flow and a standalone. And then the third option, I guess, before us, not from a financial standpoint, is closing parks.
Some of the facilities that we can close.
Because we just do not have the funding available to sustain our even reduced level of effort.
We have more, or can I go to Gary?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gary.
You mentioned the possibility of surplusing some property. What did you come up with on that?
We have been in the process of inventory. I'm going to let Carrie speak to that because we are having those conversations in-house right now.
Yes, and we're looking at our different properties that we own, and we're looking at the details of those properties as to how did the county acquire those? Are there any reversionary clauses, which means if we don't use a property for recreational purposes, in some instances, it could revert back to the source in which we got it from, potentially a donation, for example.
Like Deschutes Falls?
I'm sorry?
Like Deschutes Falls Park?
No, it's not Deschutes Falls, it would
Okay.
not include
Go ahead,
that.
then.
But all of the properties are somewhat unique, and usually a combination. Some of them were, part of the value of the property was donated, part of it was paid for by the county. So what we're doing right now is really going through and vetting those different properties and looking at the details as to how the county acquired them, how much we paid, of course, what the marketable value of those properties are. Can we sell the property, or is it encumbered by something like a reversionary clause? We could choose to do that and follow that reversionary clause. If it was a grant-funded property, for example, there may be some encumbrances on the property that makes it difficult to sell without replacing that property with a like amount of property for recreation.
So yet to be determined if we've got any eligible properties.
Absolutely. We've been working as a group within Public Works, had a real estate division involved to help guide us through this. And we'll have, by the end of the year, we'll have a comprehensive list of all of the park's properties and their status.
Brian, can you get the other mic over here so we don't have to keep going back and forth? Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Though I would
Roll.
just add to that, keep in mind that those properties are mostly undeveloped properties that we would be looking at selling. And so while there would be a financial reduction, the M&O reduction and expenditures would be negligible, right? I mean, we may have a few fees like property, stormwater fees and things that we wouldn't be paying on those properties, but we're not keeping those actively maintained to the level that we are with some of our active use parks, so that doesn't have a huge impact. What it does provide is maybe a one-time influx of some cash, but that, again, doesn't solve a long-term issue for maintenance and operations funding.
And the levy shift, that 500, would that cover everything for the near future anyway?
Based on our current budget projections, yes. While we continue.
So we'd
pursue
have
these
to
other
either
options.
do less paving or become more efficient, right? On roads, because we'd have less revenue.
250,000, yes.
Are any of you aware of what Jackson County, Michigan is doing on improving county roads as they recycle it as they go? You know about it at all? This is in a county, national county magazine.
Is that recycling asphalt?
Uh-huh. And on site, but it's I'm told it's the only one in the nation. So I guess what I'll do is I'll pass this down to you.
Was that out of the most recent article or
Yep,
magazine?
out of
Okay, I have it.
August of 2019. Might you have it?
Yes.
Okay.
I got it in the mail yesterday.
Well, I read it last night, so.
Good job. I'll check it out. We do
Anyway, I
recycle
think
asphalt, though.
But
it
Jerry,
is
did you
worth
hear what
looking
you-
at.
We do recycle asphalt?
We recycle. But I'll check it out.
Anyway, it sounds like there's new processes to do things and do it better, cheaper. And I know in Michigan, they have a very harsh weather situation compared to what we have, so might even be more effective for us. Anyway, I'm inclined to go for the.
This is just for,
I know,
just
I
setting
know,
the stage.
just for discussion, but I'm inclined to support the parks because we need it. I often use this comparison. We've got 4 parks employees and Lacey's got 38 for theirs. And I think that is almost criminal that the state, as a sub-agent of the state, if you will, that we are stuck in such a predicament. I know we're talking about doing this 20% thing, but we need to have adequate parks, and that's not going to make us adequate, but maybe we could get by if we were to kind of pony up and do some new process and backfill with technology, maybe.
So Robin, Ramiro, and then go back to you, because I've got a couple questions still.
So my question is, in the estimated expenditures for 2020, did you include a potential COLA?
No, I did
So
not.
this $900,000 doesn't include
Right.
a COLA, so it's going to be even more than this. And I would just note that future years, costs are going to continue to grow, so whatever solution we find needs to have some kind of a growth factor built in, or we're going to be right back here.
Correct.
Okay, good point. Romero?
So as I think Karen has stated, they can't believe the director is suggesting this. I can't believe the county manager is supporting this idea. And I think it's just the reality we're facing. And the reality, because what we're doing, we're just taking from one to pay the other, because there is really no options for parks. And I think this is a creative idea. I believe that we need to work with Robin in terms of this additional $500,000 levy shift takes into the capacity of the overall levy. I believe there is enough capacity, but also we'll have to be seeing how that is going to be impacting not just now, but in the future. And as I call this, is a creative solution. I personally encourage the board to seriously consider this. But again, as Robin has stated, it's just another strategy to bridge us over a couple more years. This is not a long-term solution. And I don't think that we can probably continue to take money out of the road fund to fund this, because then puts pressures on the road fund as well, because there's some obligations. We can be as inventive, as sustainable, but still the cost of doing business is increasing, and the deterioration of the road system also is increasing. So it's a larger issue. It's a larger issue for the county, perhaps to all counties across the state. But at least from my point of view, this is a very innovative solution. I think it is going to bridge us over for a couple more years, and I will suggest the commissioners consider this during your budget deliberations.
Okay. You have further?
I do have one other
I do
thing.
too. Go ahead.
Possibly, if we could make this happen, we could get Kerry to stick around and implement the program, see if we couldn't make it more effective.
There you go.
He's already got me on record.
Do we know roughly what Deschutes Falls Park, since we opened that last year, what that costs to maintain? I know we had to put up a building and other amenities up front, but do we know what kind of costs are involved in maintaining that park?
You know, I wish I had a number. If I threw a number at you, it would probably be wrong sitting
Way
here
off,
right
okay.
now. So I'd be happy to get that back to you.
I don't need it. The point of that is it is such a gorgeous, stunning park, but it is so remote. And I really believe the public needs to know and be very aware that we are discussing shortfalls in parks, that we're discussing a levy shift to parks, that we're discussing the few parks that we have and the very few park employees that we have, that we're actually engaging in a discussion of surplusing out our parks and getting rid of them, because that will bring a tear to my eye. I don't know about the rest of the community. They value their parks, but I don't believe the majority of our citizenry understand the dilemma that we're in now. And to maintain these parks is not give fewer dollars to law and justice, fewer to park or public health, fewer dollars to community planning, and to pay for. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. Fewer money to roads to pay for parks, and that's kind of what we're forced to do at this point, if we do that. And that shift would be not just short term. It's not for a year or two. It's ongoing, I would imagine. But I think the public really needs to be aware that we're actually discussing surplusing our parks out because we can't afford them, and get some public feedback. Well, we took care of all that. Anything further?
No, sir.
Anything?
No, and again, we'll bring this item again as part of your budget deliberations here in 2 weeks or so, among many other items.
Maybe one other thing.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
One other thing. As we move forward on looking for a solution, we have had a pretty good turnaround on revenue this past year. And I'd like to at least explore, maybe out of general fund, explore what we could do to kind of help carry this through a little longer by maybe taking a look at revenue. I know that fluctuates, but we've seen a pretty good economy lately, and maybe that can also be a piece of the fix.
Why is he being so mean to you?
That sounds pretty nice to me.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to item number 2, U.S. Fish and Wildlife 5-year review of the endangered species. And right up front, I will just tell you that I have a call. I have a duty to call Brad Thompson, and I have not made that call. I hope to do it during the lunchtime before the BoCC meeting, just to get it done. And then with that, then I turn it over to Romero.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to the conversation the board had last week. And Mr. Tibetan is in the audience, and just like to express our appreciation to Mr. Tibetan, where he brought to the board's attention of in the Federal Register, there was an announcement that will be in the process of the regular update of the 5-year review of the endangered species, including the Mazama pocket gopher, among other species, as stated on the Federal Register. The Federal Register is stated they had a deadline to provide comments of this past yesterday. That was August 12, 2019. As a result of the conversation with the board, but I believe it becomes a surprise not just to the board, but perhaps to all of us about this particular comment period, I reached out to Brad Thompson via phone call, where on his own words, he stated that perhaps his office was not consulted related to this particular publishing on the Federal Register, and that perhaps he was not necessarily consulted on the August 12, 2019 deadline to provide comments. Also, during that conversation, he stated his office is planning to send a formal letter to the county, hopefully by the end of August of 2019, where his office formally will be requesting specific comments related to the 5-year review, which right now is included on the upcoming federal fiscal year to his office, as in the work plan. He also stated the August 12, 2019 is flexible, and the comments that will be preparing down the road will be taken into consideration. We follow up with meeting with staff, including your legal counsel, in looking at the different possible scenarios of this. I think at that point it was prudent perhaps to just submit a letter meeting the August 12, 2019. And that letter, I believe, was reviewed by you. You provided comments, and that was formally submitted to U.S. Fish and Wildlife yesterday, meeting the deadline August 12. In this letter, what we outline is just high-level bullet points of additional information that we'll be providing when we receive a formal letter from the regional office from U.S. Fish and Wildlife for the county to provide formal comments on the 5-year review of the endangered species. This is just to frame the issue. I'll give Josh a little bit of time to provide his perspective on this. Travis is available to you, and I believe Commissioner Irwitz attended a meeting related to this. He would like to share that with the board as well.
Who first? Okay.
No, I'll wait.
Go ahead, Josh.
Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you for the synopsis, County Manager Chavez. I would just like to add my appreciation to the citizens who brought this to our attention, Mr. Tibetan and others, in terms of the 5-year review status being announced in the Federal Register starting June 11th and then ending August 12th. That information provided us the opportunity to move quickly. So I'd like to say thank you also to the staff of CPED for being nimble and able to provide a marker that we laid down yesterday in the letter on August 12th, as well as the prosecuting attorney for their review and the Board of County Commissioners for your review and signatures. I think it's important to remember that the staff of CPED and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have been coordinating over the past year on the HCP and the questions that remain from the federal government. So we were able to take the work that's been done and use that as at least the beginning stages of the letter that we provided in the 5-year review status on August 12th. We'll provide a more comprehensive response using that data and information when we receive this letter from U.S. Fish Regional Office. I'd like to also just go back over real quickly what is within the 5-year review. And the things that are asked of within that discussion are species biology, habitat conditions, conservation measures that have benefited the species, threat status and trends, and other information. And so those are the 5 areas that our staff has been looking at within the HCP itself, but also in relation to the 5-year review status. So just know that your team has been working on this, is working on it, and appreciates the input from the citizens. As it's been said before, we're all in this together as citizens of Thurston County, so that is appreciated. Oh, and I'd also say that in terms of the HCP, you'll be receiving a briefing on the letter and our response. All of this information that I've just discussed, September 4th is the schedule for that briefing to the board.
Okay. Gary, you have something to add to that right away?
Well, I did attend a Sentinel Landscapes meeting over in the community center at Lacey last Friday. And all the players that are concerned about the Endangered Species Act were present. Had a good visit with the temporary director of U.S. Fish and Wildlife for our region, Brad Thompson. And he had the opportunity to watch one of our work sessions, I think, where we discussed this. He could tell we were quite excited about the lack of flow of information from there. I had an opportunity to talk with folks from Commerce, Department of Commerce as well, and how this could tie in with the possibilities of us being partners in the purchase of property down in Tenino as well, in a block purchase down there. So that came up. Anyway, and in the end, you know, this listing has caused problems for the intent of the Growth Management Act. The Growth Management Act encourages growth in the urban core and discourages growth in rural America, basically. Originally, we had been told, I'll take that back, I had been told by U.S. Fish and Wildlife in a business meeting in 2013 that this was not going to have detrimental impact to municipalities, the port authorities, agriculture, the urban growth area. And they were going to be granted exemptions under the 4D rule of the Endangered Species Act. What that does is that recognizes that there might be some take activity in those particular jurisdictions, but the overall benefit would be better to the species by setting aside larger properties that we have been talking about here, that we're advocating for. And there was absolutely no reason to set aside a half acre for a particular species, because it was nothing more than penalizing the landowners. And we did talk about the possibility of partnering with other groups, and that 700 acres down at Tenino was a big piece of that, part of that discussion. And there's the Section 6 money, I think it's referred to, at the federal level, and we're normally not able to benefit from other tax-paying entities that pay in. And even if we could figure out a way around that, that would be one thing, but possibly we could just make purchase of the properties involved that would have a better mitigating ability for the county to utilize when we do get our HCP. So just a lot of discussion, and I plan on following up on that group. And so we have had staff that have been in attendance from Josh's group, and I guess over the years they've been talking with this group. It sounds like everybody's, the military was quite active here as well, because they're worried about their ability to conduct their mission at Fort Lewis or the Lewis McCord JBLM group. So there's a component in there that wants to solve this problem, and I think they're willing to work with us towards a solution. And it sounded like U.S. Fish and Wildlife was interested in looking into some of these things as well. So at least we're talking.
Very good. Commissioner Minzer.
I think I'll just stay quiet.
I have a question, and that's regarding the 5-year review. You listed bullets of all the things that are included in that 5-year review. But what I didn't hear was, and it can't, I wouldn't think it would be definitive, but that would be the economic loss or damages for that this issue has caused at the county. And by that I mean St. Martin University, perhaps Yelm School District, Mr. Tibetan, other citizens in the community, Thurston County staff hours and such. There's an economic component to this listing that is not included in that list, the laundry list of things that are included in the review. And it would be like, how do you count the seashells on the beach, right? So it would be a very crude, raw number. But I think we would probably get pretty close to a ballpark of the economic component of this issue on the county and the citizenry, if that's doable. But there's really smart people that might be able to figure some of that stuff out.
Acknowledged. Yeah, the list that I read, I did kind of paraphrase, but I think that we could find an opportunity to provide all of our sentiments on that topic.
Thank you. I was reading an article in NPR over the weekend regarding endangered species and threatened species, and it talked about economic damages. Yes, please.
If I may, work. In any event, just to respond.
Who might you be?
Thank you. Travis Burns, Prosecutor's Office, and just to comment quickly on the re-review process, and taking a step back, there's two. There's the habitat was listed, and so was the threatened species. There's been recent cases that do in fact say that the habitat, when it's established, can take into consideration economic factors. The same has not been said.
Can you say?
For the habitat, right? So
can?
It can. Although we have very limited areas that are designated as habitat. For the listed species, it's still a position of the federal government that economic factors do not necessarily play into that determination of listing. Now, put this in the whole big picture of things, and the rapid changes that we're seeing on the federal level, that may not always be the case, and I certainly would support providing that information, but I just wanted you all to be aware of where the status of the federal law is right now in terms of the listing of the species. But I think your point's well taken, Commissioner. And all information is probably valuable in this.
Yeah, and what's kind of nice to hear is that we can include it, and that they not necessarily, or they may or may not consider it, which is nice. So you add it. If they discount it, fine, but it's there. It's documented.
That's correct.
There's a lot of people that have really lost out on this thing. And it's not at the expense of not saving the species, but it's just a real number. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, maybe just for discussion, I guess. I believe there's discussion within the service itself, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as to the species and the subspecies designation as to whether or not that's justified. I know that the Department of Agriculture, scientists from the Department of Agriculture had been opposed to that part of the listing as far as subspecies. And I might just point out that when Mount St. Helens erupted and the ground was just covered with, many feet of ash, the Mazama pocket gopher was the first mammal to make a recovery in those conditions. The study information that is maintained over at the University of Nebraska refers oftentimes to the resilience of this particular critter, that it is almost impossible to control. And I think some of that is coming back up. I know the scientists from USDA testified that fact during the original hearing process when they were making a determination of listing. Their information didn't carry enough weight to do anything on that at this point in time. But I do think it's still pertinent information that they have. And I just point out in a study in 1992, right here near the airport, they killed 3,626 pocket gophers, trying to eliminate pocket gophers as part of the study. And that's in 1992, and things haven't changed a lot. That area is still full of pocket gophers. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife admits that they're an underground critter that's almost impossible to count and quantify in total. And so I think some of that can come into play as we move forward with this whole thing.
And I'm thinking more on the short term. I'll get right to you. I just think on the short term, by getting that economic component to our local U.S. fish delegation, I'm not talking about all the way up to Washington, D.C. and the Department of Interior, but to get it to our local Lacey agent, lets him know the financial impact, economic impact in their not approving our plan has on our economy. Go ahead, Ty.
Do we have any sense of the scope or depth of these 5-year reviews? I mean, is it common, or has it ever happened that it's time for a 5-year review? Oh, you know what? We shouldn't list this species. We're going to delist it. Does that happen frequently, or do we know?
Well, my observation, just looking at it very, cursory, I mean, I don't spend every day looking at this stuff, so
right.
This is with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
typically, I mean, most of those delistings, and when they do occur, would be through petition. So that is another procedural avenue that an individual could take, or an entity like Thurston County. The 5-year review, I mean, they have an obligation to do it by federal law, and they have to continue to reassess listings as a matter of course. And so my sense, and part of the reason why we may not have had broad notice, and I'm just speculating at this point, but I think it's largely they compile all the listings and then go put on their federal register. If there isn't much interest or dialogue, then they probably move along. But most of the times, at least the cases that I've been able to see where there are successful delistings or moving down from endangered to threatened, they typically are from a petition. But I think either way, if the information's good, the information's good.
Yeah.
And so it's a valid process. I just don't, I don't have a sense as to whether, without information being provided by a stakeholder or an affected individual, how much effort does the federal government put into reviewing? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question.
I just want to make sure that we're not, like the scope is this and we wish it was this, and so we put a ton of resources into something that's not actually going to happen, thereby waylaying our actual work on progress toward making the revisions that will actually get this problem overcome. So I just wanted to see, if you have a sense of that as we go along, please let us know that, hey, this is really, They're not going to go back and revisit the questions of should the species have been listed to begin with. If that's true, then we shouldn't necessarily be focused our effort on that. If it's about, if it's about based on the conditions that created the listing, have those conditions been remedied in some way, which is a little more what my suspicion that the review is about, and those answers are different or not as powerful, then maybe we factor that into the resources that we dedicate to this effort. Absolutely, I want to see any relevant information, go to the government that we can easily and as relevant and provide. I just don't want us to get off track, hoping that there's this detailed, in-depth, meaningful review that we're not going to get, because we have limited time and resources to be able to accomplish a goal for our citizens.
May I add to that real quick?
Sure, please.
I would agree with that. And I don't know if you read the article in NPR about the way the new view that the Interior has now for the new coming up species, and what they will include and not include in the review they will get before a higher standard before something becomes threatened or endangered. And it doesn't apply anything that's already listed. And from what I've been told, and I might be wrong, was that it takes an act of Congress, a literal act of Congress, to decertify something, a species. And so I don't expect that to happen in my lifetime. Like you say, we're short on time. I don't expect to see that in my lifetime. But I want them to have all the relevant information that we can provide so we can move on. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a point of interest, I know individuals down there in the Grand Mound area, Rochester area, in about 4 days got together, and I believe Mr. Tibetan put this together on maybe what it was going to entail, but I think 263 residences in Rochester signed a petition asking for relief from the Mazama pocket gopher, and I think that happened in about 3 days. And then that's going to be shipped to the local representative down there, and I think that is Jamie Butler. I think she represents those folks down there, and it's going to be sent to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And if that was raised in 3 days, and we didn't even talk about the aggravation to citizens in down around Bucota and Tenino and Yelm, because that's where most of the impact takes place. I would guess that there are a lot of folks that have been kind of the silent majority, if you will, that feel they're getting a raw deal on this. And I know that's not a legal term, but what we can do to help them is going to be pretty important in the future.
I agree, but I haven't gotten the sense that the federal government, lists or delists based on the number of aggravated citizens, and so that's what that's exactly what I'm afraid of. Is that we're so responsive to our aggravated citizens that we take our eye off the ball and actually divert resources from what will actually end up helping the aggravated citizens. That's all I'm raising.
Sure.
Okay. Josh, I stifled you, but go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge those statements. I think that the first one in terms of staff resources, the intent of CPAD is to, like I had said earlier, is to use the information that we've gathered over the past year to have that kind of be double duty in terms of how we reply to the 5-year status review. So while we're updating the HCP in regards to the questions that the U.S. federal government had, that information also plays into how we respond to the 5-year review status. So the question is, or the answer is, acknowledged. We too are concerned about staff resources and want to ensure that what we're doing is viable and has a path forward. I'd also say in relation to the recent news from the Department of Interior and their rules on the ESA, Endangered Species Act, we're also aware that this is a moving target. We have multiple targets and they're moving while we're trying to lock them down. Mm-hmm. Our staff is trying to lead the target, as it were, but we're working on providing that information and ensuring that staff resources are used appropriately.
Okay. Romero?
So next steps, hopefully we receive a letter from the regional office from U.S. Fish and Wildlife by the end of this month, where they will be formally requesting comments from the county and any other stakeholders related to the review of the 5-year plan of the Mazama pocket gopher endangered species, among other species, I believe, including Oregon species. So at that point, staff will evaluate. We'll bring that letter to you, obviously, for your discussion. And depending on the terms and requests of that letter, the staff may propose a draft response, obviously, for you to review and eventually sign it.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Piney.
And I guess as we continue this process, we're still going to be working towards coming up with HCP to kind of solve as much of this aggravation for our community as we can. But I might note that we submitted well over a year ago, and we're still in the throes of trying to put that together. And I really related to your bake a cake comparison, because they're asking for something without giving us adequate direction, I think. So
yeah,
we'll see where it goes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Travis. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. That takes us to number 3, comprehensive plan update. Welcome back, Josh.
Thank you.
Commissioners, this is an update. Let me take you back maybe early in the year, where as part of the scope of work, or what we call the docket of the comprehensive plan update, you included just about 12 elements. And early in the year, there was an effort just to maybe concentrate what we call on the core elements of the comprehensive plan. It was, I believe, close to 5 elements out of that list of 12. And providing direction to staff to make an emphasis to move forward and finalize as soon as possible those core elements of the comp plan update, because those core elements has an impact on the status that we have with the Department of Commerce, whether we are in compliance or not. I believe you have the history a little bit behind that. So staff is here just to give you a little bit of pieces of good news, and also walk you through what you should be expecting in the upcoming months in order for you to be in the position to consider approving the core elements of the comprehensive plan update.
Thank you. Again, great synopsis, thank you. And just kind of taking us back a little bit in terms of the required chapters from the State Department of Commerce, when the board approved the core pieces of the periodic update to go forward to the Planning Commission and for their approval, our staff, who is always overachievers, said we've also got these chapters that are ready for the review of the Planning Commission. And so we had a conversation about how we move as much forward as possible while allowing for more comment on what we're calling the continuing items of the periodic update. So this action that we're talking about right now is not the singular action of the final approval of the periodic update. It's the approval of the core items within the periodic update, and the continuing portion of the periodic update will continue going forward in the months to come, being reviewed by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is aware of this kind of 1A, 1B scenario. We've reviewed this through legal counsel, and we're solid on this, addressing the Department of Commerce needs to get our overdue status relieved on our comprehensive plan periodic update on those 5 chapters that Romero mentioned. And actually, let me just read those real quick. As affirmed by the Department of Commerce, those chapters that need to be, that are required by Commerce to relieve the overdue status are Chapter 2, Land Use, Chapter 4, Housing, Chapter 5, Transportation, Chapter 6, the Capital Facilities Plan, and Chapter 7, Utilities. Along with that, staff brought other items to the board, as well as on a separate track, we're engaging on the discussion for the wireless code update. So a lot of stuff is moving forward kind of all at the same time. I had asked for a realistic target time of the core periodic update from our staff to receive a recommendation from the Planning Commission. They came back with a target date of August 28th to receive that recommendation from the Planning Commission. Our staff then decided that there was multiple opportunities to engage in discussions with the Planning Commission and move that deadline, and they received an affirmation for approval from the Planning Commission last week on August 7th, I believe. So we will be providing a briefing to the board on the fact that the Planning Commission provided an approval and recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Planning Commission provided that on August 7th. The briefing to the board will take place on September 4th. This then begins the process where the board formally starts the review of what was approved in the core portion of the periodic update. We'll discuss the overarching decision by the Planning Commission and how it applies to those chapters. Then the next steps will be a discussion on receiving public testimony, setting that public hearing, and then receiving information on each one of the specific items. So this is not done. This is just a nice big marker in the process where the Planning Commission has exceeded the deadline and provided a recommendation, which you'll hear at the beginning of September.
Wow.
So I know it's kind of convoluted, lots of different little pieces, but I want to make sure you're aware that the Planning Commission has done a great job on their portion of this, and staff is preparing the documents for your review the first week of September.
That's nice to hear. And ultimately with an end of the year finalization?
So the
comp
next,
plan?
those steps are dependent upon the information that you receive from the public and what more information you'd like from staff to make those decisions.
Very good.
So on the September 4th briefing, that will be the first time that you will see in detail some of the revisions and some of the recommendations the Planning Commission has put forward to you. So that briefing will not be, here they are, it will be in more detail, what elements, really what changes you might consider changing it. And depending on your review, your questions, we can follow up with additional briefings to you, eventually leading for you to consider setting a public hearing. And but depending on the public testimony, then approving those changes. The goal from staff is to have you be in the position to approve those changes or those elements by the end of the year.
Okay.
But again, depending how in-depth and how additional questions you will have, because certainly you need to be well aware of those changes and be understanding what is it that you might be considering approving.
Mm-hmm. And this is a work product of nearly 2 years that the Planning Commission has been reviewing portions of the comprehensive plan periodic update. So just again, a huge thank you to the hard work that our citizen volunteers on the Planning Commission have put into this product.
Do you have anything?
I'm good.
It's all at the same time as we're getting through that process, we're going through budget too. It's going to be a very lighthearted fall. Yeah. All right, we have nothing? Anything further?
No, on this item, no.
Thank you, Josh, very much.
Thank you.
You've got great staff.
I agree.
Rock stars. Number 4, the 2019 Thurston County Fair update. Welcome back, Josh.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Trifecta here.
Go for it, Mr.
So within the community planning and economic development, one of the great divisions that we have is the Thurston County Fair. It's been operating in Thurston County since around 1862. And when we think of economic development and community planning, I think that the fair fits right into that. We provide an opportunity for local vendors to bring their wares and demonstrate their services for use for citizens within our county, as well as bringing folks from without of our county all over into our county to see how we operate. So there's a discussion with the Visitors Convention Bureau about heads and beds. We have around 20 to 25,000 attendees of the fair each year that are here are local citizens, but also folks that come from elsewhere to, again, be vendors, but also show their animals in the 4-H process. And in a great year, we call the fair kind of a Goldilocks event. It can't be too hot, it can't be too cold, it can't be too windy, it can't be too rainy. It's got to be just right. And so on a great year, when everything is just right for all 5 days, the target for attendance is 25,000 individuals. On a good year, and this year was a good year, we had rain on Friday and it was a little bit hot on Sunday. Anything over 20,000 attendees is success. So the 2019 Thurston County Fair achieved 23,500 attendees. So we're feeling like this is quite a successful year. I'd also say that in years past, 4 or 5 years ago, the market sale, which is where kids raise animals throughout the year and then they're auctioned off, had a tough time struggling to get over 100,000 in contributions. This year, that market sale achieved $130,000 for the
Yes,
kids in
good
Thurston
job.
County. So another big success. I'd also like to mention the pancake breakfast, the Board of County Commissioners Pancake Breakfast. We've been tallying attendees over the past few years, and this is the way that we want to make sure that we're calculating. Again, CPED is all about consistency, transparency, and accountability. We'd been kind of ballparking the numbers in terms of total pancakes served previously, but we have started to lock down that calculation. We tabulate pancakes that leave the table as a single pancake served. And this year, the TPS report, total pancakes served, is 416.
Yes, okay.
So
Wait. There's 2 per plate, though, isn't there?
total pancakes served, 416. Total pancakes made, 832. Given that there are 2 pancakes per plate.
And many
Thank
had
you for
3.
that.
Okay.
Plus the commissioners donated at least 50 or more pancakes to the local fire department. We cooked and took over that.
Indeed. So this is an increase of about 30 to 35 total pancakes served from last year. Again, we'll keep an eye on that TPS report going forward.
Yeah, that's a new one.
I might add, again, for public consumption, no pun intended, that this was born not out of from the taxpayer dollar, but from the commissioners and the county manager contributions to the pancakes, to the syrup and the orange juice cup, all the above. And of all of those, individuals served a free breakfast. Only one person complained that his pancake was overdone. There you go. So I would say it's an overwhelming success.
Additionally, we had Marionberry syrup this year, which was a new portion of the event, so that was really appreciated, and we poured it for the individuals. And I'd also like to say, in terms of the pancake served, there are options on the table. You could choose a less done pancake and a more burned pancake. So
I know that I created a wealth of options for the
All inclusive. But there was no tartar sauce being served with the pancakes.
That's right.
Maybe next year.
What?
Never mind.
Just whipped cream.
Yeah, just whipped cream and syrup.
I'd say the final kind of big headline news is the Thurston County Fair partners with the Thurston County Auditor's Office to engage the youth of Thurston County in voting for the next year's mascot. And the young people have spoken. The 2020 mascot is Billy Goat. So Billy Goat will be the mascot for the upcoming fair in 2020.
Billy Goat. That's funny.
What was it this year?
It was alpaca.
Oh, right, alpaca. I saw that.
And the date for the pancake breakfast for next year?
I'm not sure of the exact date. It's the Saturday. So the fair is always the first weekend in August. So it's Wednesday to Sunday.
The first Saturday in August.
Yep, and so the first Saturday is the pancake breakfast. If anybody has a calendar, that would actually be really good.
If you're looking
Actually,
forward to it, yeah.
Information to have. Sorry about that. I was so excited about the pancakes served.
First Saturday in August 2020 is August 1st.
Oh, there you go.
August 1st. And that will be, I believe, Commissioners, the 60th anniversary of the pancake breakfast. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, banner year. August 1st, 2020. Free pancakes from the Commissioners.
Yay. And county manager.
And county manager.
All right.
Just make sure that I block my calendar. Yeah.
Are you done now?
At the pleasure of the board.
So at
Anything
some point
further?
you will come back and report on the financial elements
Yeah.
of the fair? Not necessarily right now, or
Yeah.
do you have that?
No, I don't. We have, we know that we ended net positive. We have bills still to come in, like the power bill from PSC. Obviously, it's a carnival, so there's a big expenditure that needs to go out. But once we have those numbers that are correct and verified, we'll provide that to the board.
And you're doing some background work for me, I understand, I hope still, maybe perhaps coming up.
In terms of how vendors are participating in financially with the fair to keep
Yeah,
it
how many
solvent.
nonprofits versus for-profits, but yeah, there's a blanket you have to pay, everybody has to pay 20% of their gross profit.
Again, we'll look into that and ensure that it meets the values of CPED in consistency, transparency, and accountability.
Right, and if we've lost nonprofits in their participation because of that, that'd be interesting to hear.
Indeed.
If we have that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I can say thank you. You're not coming back?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you, Josh. Public testimony follow-up.
I believe you already discussed. I
Okay.
don't have any follow-up on that.
And now we're down to commissioner items.
I had two short items. One was just a conversation that I had with State Representative Dolio recently, and the Car Tab Tim Eyman initiative that's coming in November. She's very concerned about the impact it'll have on our local jurisdictions. I haven't really analyzed it, but I think maybe we should disseminate some information to the board. She's asking local leaders to step up and articulate to our citizens, whether you're for or against it, that citizens should know the facts about what the impact's going to be on us. Transportation will be hit in particular. And so I just wanted to share that she's asking us to take a hard look at it. The polling that she's seen shows that it has a reasonable chance of success, so we have to take it very seriously and what it would mean for our community. The second thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit related in terms of transportation impact. I'm the representative to the Transportation Policy Board, and the retreat is coming up, and something that has come up that's kind of hijacked our retreat is an allocation method that the local jurisdictions have been using for transportation money is not really appropriate. The state, even though feds can go by formula and states can go by formula to the local, we as a local jurisdiction are not allowed to go by any sort of geographical formula. They don't tell us what we have to do. We can, but they require that we put some policy analysis on top of the allocation of the dollars, so that we're
the federal funds.
The federal funds, yeah. And so that we're looking at this in terms of our most important regional goals or equity considerations or whatever we want to do. They're not telling us how, but they're saying that what we can't do is just go, okay, 20% to Lacey, 15% to Yum, and that can't be the way it goes. So we're going to have a discussion at the TPB retreat on September 11th about what that ought to look like, whether it should be a matrix system like we do for TST and CIP, where we have projects listed under under some sort of a thing. But the concern is about making sure South County projects and communities don't get left out of this revision. And I want to give a big thanks to our chair is Andy Ryder, Mayor of Lacey, who really has no individual motivation, but he scheduled a special session with me yesterday, along with Graham Sackerson, to specifically kind of pre-brief me on this concerns and how this could affect South County, and wanting to make sure that South County voice was appropriately represented when we had this very important discussion. So I really appreciate him kind of giving me up to speed, because I might not have seen this coming. Yeah. And I wouldn't have had a chance to let you guys know. If you have thoughts about how we can protect South County projects to make sure that they fit into the regional conversation we have about the most important transportation contracts, please let me know. If we go to some kind of an obvious thing to do, which a lot of groups do, is you have some kind of objective matrix scoring system, and then you have kind of an overlay of discretion where you can put some of your other values to balance things out, to try to find that balance. Because when you go to a purely objective numerical system, it is impossible to get all of the values of the community represented and not get a certain type of project. That could be South County projects, or could be a certain type of a project. You're always going to get, somebody's going to get aced out and never going to be able to move up that grid. So I'm going to be fighting for some type of discretionary component. I haven't decided or thought clear enough about what that's going to look like. And that's why I'm asking for your input, or Ramiro and Robin as well.
Good.
This is interesting. So I'm going to date myself on this. Back prior to 1990, the allocation of federal funds was based on population. And there was two elements. There was the FAS and FAUS. It was the rural federal allocation based on population and the urban rural federal allocation. So at that time, it provided local jurisdictions with the flexibility to, it was a modest allocation, but what we did is it was cumulative, allows the jurisdictions to accumulate the federal allocation when the time comes. You can take that dollar amount you accumulated over the years and make a logical investment based on what the jurisdiction thought it was. So back in early 1990s, the federal government passed the Surface Transportation Program Act, the STP. And at that point, it really changed the dynamics as to how the federal funds will be distributed, created the Surface Transportation Program and the Quality Mitigation Act as well, the CMAQ funding. So those two areas, and the STP emphasized a lot on multimodal. Multimodal transportation, which includes transit, bicycles, and everything else. So as a result of that, over the years, it was through a competitive process. And that's how the regional groups were to form. The Puget Sound Regional Council was formed at that time just to really start crafting how the allocation of federal funds will be distributed among Kitsap County, King County, Pierce County, and Kitsap County. And also the Thurston County Regional Planning Council was formed on those terms. It was just to be the hub as to how it was an allocation, but the distribution has to be in a competitive process based on the set criteria and the point criteria. So you're absolutely on point, because over the years, because the emphasis has been on more of an urban areas, the rural areas of the county have left behind. And the only access that we have been in, because we have been inventive, is access to federal funds for rural areas is through resurfacing, overlay programs. And in fact, the county has been successful because we introduced that concept, at least when I came to the Thurston Regional Planning Council, to set aside preservation programs, because that allocation is somewhat of, from the environmental point of view, is pretty straightforward. Is what we call an exempt activity from federal environmental regulations. But that is the only way that we can probably go through and access federal funds for rural areas. And secondly, some of the smaller towns, such as Tenino, they don't have the means and methods to meet with the requirements of the federal guidelines. Yeah. As you have approved some of the contracts and some of the agreements in the past, what we take is the county take the federal allocation because we already have the system in place, and in return we give what we call clean money, road fund money, to those jurisdictions to do some of those projects. So on point.
Yeah, because Ned hits on it. They're doubly disadvantaged. They're disadvantaged substantively to show how their project can have the impact enough citizens as an urban project, and then they're disadvantaged process-wise because of their inability to do the grant applications, manage the federal crime. I mean, Andy Ryder was talking about how in Lacey, if it's not a certain amount of money, they don't even bother. I mean, even Lacey with its resources doesn't bother to go after certain federal money unless it's a certain chunk because of the onerous nature that Robin's described to us many times, the onerous nature of complying. So it's just going to be a challenge to get a fair system. I mean, Tom Cena and I have been working on a project with the Salmon Recovery Council about how they're trying to do the same thing with salmon dollars, like create an objective score sheet, but it's very controversial because no matter what you do, there's certain types of projects that will never get up that score sheet. Mm-hmm. So you have to find a way to balance discretion with parameters, criteria, and that's what we're going to be struggling with. And I'm happy for any input if you have any ideas, and I'll report back as this process moves along.
Very
That's
nice.
all I have.
Thank you. Gary, you have an issue?
I guess it's a bit of a question, but to let you folks know that I'm attempting to look into it, and that's the PILT program, Payment in Lieu of Taxes, that the federal government has to reimburse jurisdictions that are adversely impacted because of government holdings. Generally, it's property. I'm curious if we've had any response back from council
I engage
about the PILT program.
I engage with council related to the PILT program on those terms. And Elizabeth is going to look a little bit further into their requirements. And I think the conversation that I had with her was really is the PILT program is what the federal government owns a property. And how, since there's a discretion within owning the property, and perhaps they don't pay adequate taxes, is an attempt for the federal government to pay back the local jurisdictions through that process. The question on that I ask is, well, in trust lands for tribal owned properties, where the federal government keep those properties in trust, they don't have any ownership, how the PILT program will apply or not on that. So I will continue to work with Elizabeth, and she has not provided any guidance on that yet.
But it's federal owned, not state owned. Federal owned property.
Is the federal program, yeah.
PILT, okay.
And the piece in question, but there'll be other pieces that apply if this was to apply to trust land, would be the county was involved in litigation with the Chehalis tribe over the Great Wolf Lodge on whether or not that should be contributing to the tax rolls. And apparently the county lost in that litigation. But that type of activity was never in place when the PILT program was put into place to address things like Forest Service and BLM and properties like that maybe were being logged, and the benefit wasn't coming to the local jurisdiction the same as it was from the private sector. So I just think it's worth exploring for sure how much money we are losing in potential revenue that possibly could fall within that PILT program. And if it does not, I think it would be worth talking to our congressional delegation to see if that couldn't be amended somehow at some point. So just looking for revenue. That's what it's all about.
Good, thank you. Okay. Any further? Do you have anything?
No, sir.
Then, for the record, our clock here says 11:48, but my phone says 11:47, but it's close enough. So we're adjourned. Thank you. The clock said 11:48.
It's actually 2 minutes fast if you look at the second hand.